I am tired and cranky, so this should go well.
I wonder which of us is crankier, because I am pretty cranky myself.
Why are you cranky this evening?
Well, I was going to chop up some of my footage from my first Fiesta stream, but the new version of OBS that I use, the Streamlabs OBS, that integrates all the Streamlabs stuff, all the alert widgets and things, is all in OBS now, so it's really nice and convenient. But for some reason, it defaults local recordings to FLV files, which I guess are like Flash video files.
Flash video, that format nobody uses anymore.
Right, like none of my video software recognizes it. I threw it at 2 different file conversion programs that both choked on it. So I had this 4-hour-long stream that I wanted to cut up, and
Well, now you got to do the stupid thing where you've got to like export it as a private video to YouTube and then download that and then cut that up, right? Isn't that a thing you can do?
that would have been much smarter than what I actually did. Why didn't I consult you? Why are you cranky tonight, McClain?
Just work in general. I'm tired and cranky from work, and just we try to keep it jovial and light here, but just following the news. Just the news has me down. I need to stop watching it, but it's unfortunately part of my job. So
Yeah, I have purposely unplugged from the 24-hour news cycle, and it's been a huge life improvement.
I feel like I'm going to go one of two ways, because without getting into too many details, my job is probably terminal. Like, at some point I'm going to get laid off. I don't know when, but that's apparently a thing that's coming down the pipe at some point. And one of two things is going to happen. Either I'm going to just completely unplug and just be like, forget the real world for a little bit, take my little severance and be cool, or I'm going to go crazy and like go marching in the streets with people, and it's going to be weird.
We have a mutual acquaintance who, he's big on the 24-hour news cycle. Like politics, it was, I think it was his major, or maybe his minor when he was in college. And politics, it's just his hobby. He just enjoys following it. And I hopped on Discord late the other night, and he's always on late at night, and just looking for a little light conversation. I typed, I don't know if I should get a Wawa sandwich now or wait till tomorrow. And then he's like, North Korea. I'm like, oh man.
Oh, womp womp.
Now we had a 10-minute conversation about North Korea, but I got him back because...
Is he one of your D&D players? Did you pluck at an eyeball or something of his?
Not yet. We're getting to that.
Oh, good. Oh, can't wait.
But no, he on Discord tonight, he's like, man, I could really go for a Wawa sandwich. And I'm like, yeah, but they're separating families at the border. So...
Well, I wasn't going to bring it up, but that is specifically the thing that's got me down because, as we may have mentioned on the podcast, I have a young child. So, on one hand, I always get really annoyed when people say, I have a child. I'm like, you know what? Screw you. You shouldn't have to have a child or a wife or a mom or a daughter to have empathy about something. You should just have empathy. But at the same time, it does hit you a little harder, I see these stories and stuff, and I'm like, oh, but my child, and I would kill someone. I would probably literally kill someone. I backed a Kickstarter back in the day for this game called That Dragon Cancer, and it was this artsy-fartsy game. I shouldn't say artsy-fartsy, it's actually really serious. It's about this, this family that, like, had a child that died of cancer, and they made this video game that was sort of about dealing with the grief. And when I backed it, I did not have a child, and I was like, this seems like a good thing to back. I'll give them some money for this. I could throw $5 at them. And then when the game came out, I looked at it and I said, I can never play this now. Because in the time between me backing the Kickstarter and it coming out, my child was born. And now I'm like, I can't play a kid cancer game now. That's never going to happen.
I definitely understand what you mean, because following the little bit of news that I've followed, in fact, I haven't followed the news at all. My major connection with this news story has been somebody, I follow a lot of D&D people on Twitter, and some guy posted a really long, detailed D&D story about this guy he played with D&D in college, and the campaign was really long, and it was based around morality, and over the course of the campaign, like, the characters, like, developed a strong sense of good versus evil, and then they went on to defeat this big villain, even though the villain was trying to tempt them with magic weapons and all this power.
That just sounds like your Planescape campaign, but go on.
He goes on to say that today one of the players in the campaign is the Deputy Secretary of Health and Human Services who's defending Trump's policy of breaking up. So the reason this hit me is because I read a lot of these stories. This was actually retweeted by Mike Merles, who's one of the lead designers on D&D. So a lot of the stories that he retweets are like, hey, I had a great experience with D&D and I want to share it. And that's how this started. And then just at the end of the story, it's like, yeah, but anyway, this guy who used to know right from wrong in D&D is now backing this policy.
Oh, God. And you just imagine this guy, like, screaming, like, but your paladin would never do this.
Well, do you think that would work as, like, a shaming mechanism?
Just be like, someone needs to pick, I mean, I'm sure it exists, but someone's going to do, like, the 9-square thing with, like, political figures. It's like, you lawful good, you're chaotic evil, you're true neutrals. Just shaming people with their alignment. That's why I always played morally ambiguous. Well, I say always. I haven't played a ton of D&D, but I played a morally ambiguous character who's just sort of chaotically good, mostly. You know,
I'm trying to think of a situation where I could do that to you. Like, I can't, it's hard to imagine one because you're neither a gnome nor a thief.
Well, to be fair, my character was the worst thief. And by nature, I designed him to be a treasure hunter. He just was the thief class, but he was Locke. He was Locke from Final Fantasy VI, was like my starting point for him.
I'm filing this away, though. I reserve my right. If the zombie apocalypse ever come and you and I are holed up on a roof somewhere with a couple of rifles and dwindling ammunition, and you fail to bring down the lead zombie, I want to turn to you and be like, hey, Zook could have made that shot.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll just say I was using my sharpshooter skill for the extra damage, but it made it riskier shot. So I like how this conversation started with real political news and took a hard left turn into just the nerdiest minutia.
I've been doing live recordings and stuff for a long time. I'm getting a lot better at my segues.
How is this campaign going? I keep missing. Well, I don't miss the streams, but I'm usually working or something, so I haven't been able to keep up with them. Are you still torturing your players real well?
It's going really well. The setting of the campaign is based around the Volo's Guide to Monsters. So everybody's playing a monster character, and there's no spellcasting classes. So there's no cleric in the party who can cast healing magic. And I think we found a good balance where they have some healing. Like, one of them has the healing skill, which is good for a little bit. There is a paladin who has a class feature that can do a little bit of healing. But in contrast to the previous campaign that I ran, where we had a druid and a bard with all this healing magic, it's really interesting to see how close to the wire these guys will play the combat, knowing, okay, we've got maybe 30 points of healing total for all of us. How are we going to play this? It's been a very different experience.
One thing I was wondering about, because I know in your last two campaigns, dying wasn't a super big consequence. I mean, there were a couple of characters who permadied, but for the most part, it seemed like you got to a certain point and then resurrection is super viable because your characters got pretty high level. Is this one steering so that death is really weighty, like early level stuff? Or have they unlocked the key to resurrection already, like all the other campaigns seem to do?
Without access to spellcasting, I don't really see that there is a key to resurrection. I mean, one of my players doesn't like character resurrection anyway. When his character died in the last campaign, the rest of the party jumped through all the hoops to get the spell lined up. But the rules state, for all of these resurrection spells, it has to be a willing target. So the last thing I did, I said, okay, so does your character come back to life? He goes, nah, I'm going to roll up a wizard.
Well, and that fit with his character, too. The character he was playing was very much, she was a barbarian who, like, had a good death, so to speak. So I, as a player, would probably not want to be resurrected, but my last character, Zook, was such a... He would have been like, no, bring me back, bring me back, bring me back, bring me back, now, you know?
I've been on both sides of that, personally. I've had characters where, like, okay, I feel like I've accomplished everything I wanted to set out to do with this character and can move on to something. And then I've had characters where I'm like, you know what, no, this guy's story's not done yet. Let's go back and... So yeah, I feel like I could go either way on that, personally.
Yeah, I think the next time I play a long campaign, assuming I get a chance to, I think I might... I keep going back and forth, but I think I really want to try playing a paladin and really playing, like, lawful good. But I want to be, like, the kind of lawful good where you would kill everyone in a village to get to the demon because the demon has to die. Like, that kind of, like, smite, and smite is all that matters kind of paladin.
That wouldn't be like the traditional, like, second edition lawful good paladin, but one of the paladin oaths, I believe it's the Oath of Vengeance,
Yeah.
would be perfect for that kind of character.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Basically, it would be your NPC paladin. You had paladins who were always just a-holes. And that's kind of like, I was kind of like, oh, that would be fun to roleplay as a character. Especially, you used to have two players, the one dropped out of your game, who would always butt heads with the lawful good guy. And it was always super fun. And I would love to be able to play like a lawful good paladin with him sometime if I could, because I think it would be a lot of fun. Because he seems to play mostly chaotic people.
Do have to put an asterisk on that statement, though, because this is something that comes up a lot of times in my stream chat and in the Discord. People will watch the D&D streams and will ask me for advice on tricky stuff like that. Like, that player conflict is a lot of fun, but you really require skilled players in order to make it work really well.
Well, and I think you did a good job curating skilled players, because that's why your games are interesting to watch, is because you have skilled players. They're not people who are going for the kill so much as they're going for the story. And I think you were really good. You kind of set up front, like, we're doing this for an audience, you guys. You tell the story first, you know?
Yeah. That's exactly the asterisk. Like, I'm in a position where I can pick and choose from a pool of, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 people. Not everybody's going to have that. I mean, I have a meat space group too. We play on Saturdays. And it's like, it's the same group of like 6 or 7 friends. And we all enjoy the game. But we're not going to turn to one guy and be like, we don't want you here. Send your wife over. She's really good. But you're going to have to stay home from now on.
I actually don't believe that you wouldn't just say that. That sounds like exactly like something you would say. Like, you kind of suck. Send your wife over.
The person in question actually she's a brand new player. She just started playing. I say brand new. She started playing in I ran Curse of Strahd. So this is 2 years ago or so. So this is her second campaign that she's in. It's coming to an end now, and we're about to start our third. So she's still in this phase of where she wants to play the healer, like a support character. This is actually very common when I notice, especially women coming to D&D for the first time. They want to play like a background support character. But for this character, she's like, okay, I still want to do that, but I'm also going to pick the Cleric of War.
Oh.
And then over the course of the campaign, because the Cleric of War has some really good combat abilities, and she found a really nice magical pickaxe that she's been hitting everything with. And we got to the point in the campaign where she's almost resentful when she has to use her turn to heal somebody.
That's pretty funny. Yeah, I was actually, that was one of the biggest surprises when I started playing D&D, and it makes sense given the structure of the game that, you know, your healers, at least in 5e, seem to be able to dish it out pretty well. Like, they're not going to be your front line attackers, but some of them are pretty good hitters.
McClain, this will be the first week where I have a special guest for the podcasts.
Wait, what? Oh.
Ice cold delicious Pepsi.
Oh, well, I mean, I didn't make an announcement about it, but I had a special guest too. Hold on, let me see if you can hear him. That's a whiskey on the rocks, so
nice.
I needed something to loosen the tongue a little bit after a rough day at work. I know you're not a drinker, but I do appreciate the occasional whiskey on the rocks after a long day of work.
We actually just had to take inventory on all the liquor we still have in the house, because we're having our summer barbecue on Friday.
Oh.
So we had to just take inventory. Okay, what do we have left over from our Christmas party last year?
It's so funny when you do stuff like that. Like, I don't drink tequila, but there's like a huge bottle of tequila that's just lived in my pantry for the last 10 years. I don't even know. And like, alcohol, if it's not cream-based, as far as I know, it never goes bad. So I got tequila if anyone wants to drink it. About the only thing I don't have in my pantry is gin, because the actual smell of gin makes me ill, because when I was 18, my friend got violently drunk on gin without sharing. And I like to always point out, he probably wouldn't have gotten alcohol poisoning if he had shared.
That's a good life lesson.
So just smelling gin, sweating, and puking out of him all night turned me off of gin before I ever even took a sip of it. So that's the one thing I refuse to stock in my house. I do enjoy a vodka martini, though. That is my choice of drink.
We have a bottle of absinthe out there that I feel like we've had for 5 or 6 years.
Absinthe might be one of those things that goes bad, like wine. I'm actually not sure what the shelf life on that is. I've tried absinthe before and was not impressed.
Yeah, me neither. In fact, I was gonna say, what do you mean goes bad? It starts out bad and then gets worse.
Yeah, I think that the problem with absinthe is, much like moonshine, which I sampled quite a bit of when I was I was on vacation last week, and I got to do a moonshine sampling, which was interesting. But like moonshine, I don't think you get real absinthe in the world. I think you just get something that's flavored sort of like absinthe.
Yeah, I don't like the flavor of it. I mean, it's very similar to licorice.
Yeah.
The flavor of it. I don't know if it's made from the same plants or what, but I don't like black licorice at all.
There are more licorice-y booze. I think Sambuca is licorice flavored, and the thing is, I like black licorice. But something about absinthe just did not do it for me. No, just give me some whiskey or some vodka and I'm happy. Or a good beer.
The most ill I've ever gotten off of a drink was blue curacao. And I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but a friend of mine bought it for me when we were out one night, and it comes in this big fruity glass with a little umbrella in it, and it looks like Windex, and for all I know, it tastes like Windex.
Wait, hold on. You were drinking blue curacao? I think that's how you pronounce it. Blue curacao by itself?
No, it was in some kind of cocktail.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, because usually it's in something. You put it in something and it makes it blue, and it's pretty.
Yeah, this was at a themed, like a sci-fi themed restaurant at Disney MGM.
I'm sorry, blue carousel. It's like the country. Oh my god, I lost my mind after. Yeah, I lost my mind after you said it the wrong way, and I was like, yeah, Curacao.
But yeah, it was in some kind of cocktail, and in order to accentuate the blue Windexiness of the Curacao, everyone came with a plastic ice cube that lit up like an LED in the bottom of the glass, so it was this glowing blue alien drink.
Sounds like fun. And how many of these did you have?
Oh, just one. And it was very tasty as I drank it, but the next day I was extremely sick.
You don't drink enough to probably know these kind of things. Maybe you do. I don't know. I'm making a lot of assumptions. But I find that sweet drinks, anything that's sweet, is going to give you the worst hangover. Just something about adding that much sugar to it, just going to make it way worse. I could drink whiskey and do okay. And whiskey's pretty sweet. But as soon as you give me like some sort of like pina colada or something, I'm just going to be super hungover the next day.
I feel like I'm with you on that. I feel like if I'm going to have a sugary drink, I'm going to order a soda, and enjoy the flavor of a soda.
I do enjoy a whiskey soda, like a Jack and Coke does me pretty well. That was like my college drink. That was like my wussy college drink. But every once in a while I get the urge to go back to those days. So I noticed you started your Fiesta run.
Yeah, I did that late last night. Well, my first job was Bard. Mm-hmm. And I used a code, because typically you don't unlock Bard until, I don't know, halfway through the first world, but I used a code to unlock it right away. It was rough. I had one boss that I actually had to do some level grinding in order to get a damage multiplier. I now know the phrase is, because the damage algorithms in Final Fantasy V partially involve your character level. So at certain character levels, you get another damage multiplier.
Oh, so it's like getting the extra hit in the first Final Fantasy.
It's actually more similar to how the damage multiplier works in Final Fantasy IV.
Oh, that thing I've never understood.
It's pretty much like getting extra hits in the first Final Fantasy. It's just called something a little different. And in 5, you don't even have a statistic on the screen showing you your hit percentage or your multiplier or whatever. You just kind of have to play around with it.
Yeah, I skimmed the VOD, and I just kept seeing you do the same fight over and over again, and I was like, this looks like no fun.
It's fun for me because it's different. Like, I've never had this particular trouble with this particular boss, so going through it. But then my next job that I rolled, Berserker,
right,
again, went to the job fair, bought that away. He has to process the job fair manually, so I'm sitting there, like, I don't want to quit playing, but I can't keep playing because I don't know what my next job is. So I went to bed, I woke up, turns out my next job is Thief. So now I've got to go through the next dungeon with bards and thieves.
Well, you did keep saying, if I only had a thief, I could steal better knives. So you could, theoretically, I don't know where the next, like, if you want to go forward and steal better knives, or if you want to go back to the dungeon you were in before and steal better knives. But you at least have that option now.
I won't, because the dungeon where you can steal knives sinks into the ocean.
Well, that's a bummer.
Those particular knives are on sale in the next town.
Oh,
so
well,
I'll be able to
there you go.
And then the following dungeon, after the next boss, I'll be able to steal another upgrade. I don't foresee any trouble with the next boss. The next boss has 3 different phases. It's the liquid flame in the steamship. And there's one phase where it just casts Fire 2 on itself over and over and over to heal itself. Until you attack it and change its phase again. So what I'm going to do is cycle it to that phase, have everybody hide, and just watch it cast Fire 2 until it's out of magic points. And then bring everybody back in with my mithril daggers and...
Man,
yeah, go ham.
I had no idea when I was playing RPGs when I was a kid. I mean, I say kid. I mean, all the way through being... Until I really got into, like, nerd internet. I had no idea monsters had MP limits. At all. I would have never figured that out on my own. I always just brute force the bosses. I'd come up with a strategy, but running them at an MP was... They're monsters. They can do whatever they want.
I think this is a situation where Final Fantasy is a little different from its contemporaries.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the only series that I think running monsters out of MP is actually really viable in some cases.
It's interesting because there is a divide between what's a magic spell that they do and what's just a monster ability they can pull out whenever they feel like it. I haven't played a ton of RPGs outside of like the big ones, outside of Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy and Chrono Triggers and whatnot, but I can't think of any other one that actually has a limit on the MP that the bosses can throw out at you. It does make for some interesting strategy, though.
I'm going to say, thank goodness it's there, because those edge cases, it's very helpful.
Wait, I take that back. I did know... I sort of gleamed that it was possible, but it wasn't something I ever would have thought to do as a strategy, because there's the Rasp ability, I think, in Final Fantasy VI. I think that's the one that you can just damage their MP.
Right.
So I kind of gleamed it, but I would have never thought about it as a strategy. I would always just, the thing at the top of the Fanatics Tower, I would always just put up reflect rings on my whole party and just beat the crap out of him.
Final Fantasy VI is one of the few video games that my wife has played. She's completed a couple of the Final Fantasy games. She's completed 4 and 9, and she didn't complete 6. And it's my fault. She fought her way up the Fanatics Tower. She did not find the Molulu's charm.
It's a point of personal pride that I always fight my way up that tower. It's some stubborn part of me always fights my way up that tower. I enjoy it.
She figured out to use the reflect rings to defend herself in the tower. So the boss is not actually damaging her. But she couldn't really figure out the strategy of how his weaknesses shuffle around. It's kind of confusing. So it was probably another 30 or 40 minutes of fighting the guy. And I was watching, and the whole time I'm thinking, as soon as she runs him out of hit points, he's going to cast Ultima and wipe her. And I could warn her, I could tell her it's coming, but I didn't. And it happened, and she rage quit Final Fantasy VI right there and then.
'Cause I'm just picturing, like, I can see very vividly, like, her playing the game. I'm seeing it from the perspective of the TV, and I'm seeing her hunched over a controller, the glow of the screen illuminating her face, and then you kind of off and to the side with this, like, and all you can see is your teeth and your eyes because you're just grinning, just waiting for that Ultima to pop. Oh, man. You're lucky to be alive, my friend.
I think you're right.
My wife played Final Fantasy VI, and the way she tells it, and this is one of those things where it might be apocryphal. She's like, I'm not sure if I'm remembering this completely true. She was like, I remember playing Final Fantasy VI in college, or late high school, about that time, and she got all the way to, I think she said she got all the way to the floating continent. She was like, man, this is so hard. And so she was playing it, and her boyfriend at the time was watching her, and it was so hard, and he was like, well, what equipment do you have? And she was like, well, I mean, I bought all this stuff. And he goes and checks, and she bought all this stuff and didn't equip any of it. So she spent the entire game running around and, like, starting equipment because she missed that NPC that we all make fun of. We all make fun of the NPC who tells you how to put on equipment. You're like, oh, what kind of dumbass doesn't know how to put on equipment? Well, if it's your first RPG, you don't realize that just buying something doesn't put it on you. There are games where that works. Zelda... When you pick up a new sword, you've just got a new sword. You don't have to go equip the new sword. And she also was one of those people who knew that Eris was going to die. Spoiler alert. She actually got Eris's limit breaks because she just kept playing the game with Eris in her party. and just refused to let her go die. It just was like, I'm not doing the next plot point. I enjoy this party I've got right now. I'm just going to keep circling the drain with this. And I don't think she ever beat Final Fantasy VII. I think she just played and she got her last limit break and said, and they lived happily ever after. The
There
end.
you go. This is something I hadn't considered yet. Interesting question. Because, okay, I think you would agree. Statute of limitations on spoilers is a thing. The new Harry Potter book comes out. You don't walk outside with an air horn yelling about how Snape killed Gandalf or whatever.
Yes.
And I'm sure you'd also agree that the statute of limitations on Final Fantasy VII is long over. This game came out sometime during the Reagan administration, unlike the Atari 7200 or something.
Right.
Everybody knows what happens.
Well, and with the asterisk that anyone who's listening to this podcast presumably knows what happens. I wouldn't go tell, like, my son this. I wouldn't just whisper this in his ear every day until he's old enough to play the video game.
What if you did? That'd be creepy. You start tonight, you go in and like, Eris dies on disc 1.
One of the things that I really look forward to as a parent is introducing him to video games for the first time. So I kind of hope that he gets to do some of these things unspoiled. There is always going to be some collective subconscious. Like, I knew that Rosebud was a sled forever because it was in Looney Tunes episodes. There'd be a sled named Rosebud or something, and like, you just knew it. You didn't know why you knew it, you just knew it. You know Soylent Green is people because people go, Soylent Green is people. And has anyone watched that movie in the last 30, 40 years? I haven't.
I haven't either. But there's a complication, though, because Final Fantasy VII is going to come out again.
And I was going to make this point. I think you reset the clock, but it's a much shorter clock on remakes because there is a target audience who that will be their first time playing Final Fantasy VII, and I think you should respect that. That being said, you have to be a smart consumer. So if you turn on the podcat and call back, if you turn on the podcat and you hear us start talking about Final Fantasy VII, you got to know to shut that thing down. I'm perpetually late to the party on everything. So if I walk into a room and people are talking about Final Fantasy 15, some people would consider that statute of limitation over. Like, that game's been out for what, a year and a half now? They're like, everyone's played it, who's going to play it? I haven't. It's on me to step out of the room at that point, I think.
I'm going to be honest, when you were saying, some people are going to come to this remake, it's going to be their first time playing it, and you have to respect that. The image in my head was just that picture of the Grinch getting that evil smile.
That's the smile you have when you're waiting for Ultima to pop.
It was the same smile, yeah.
Yes. With your hair even does the hair horn thing in my head. In the glow of like a CRT television, because that's what Peanuts is playing on in my head.
As far as Final Fantasy 15 goes, Gladio also kills Gandalf.
Well, I mean, clearly.
Obviously.
I mean, who else would do it? He's got the muscles. I do want to play Final Fantasy 15. It's just one of those things where I'm pretty sure my computer can handle it, but I haven't really wanted to put it through the paces yet. And there's the outside chance I'll buy a PS4 at some point, but not that I was given any real reason to this year at E3, because I watched the Sony stream and I was like, ah.
Was that your segue?
Well, yeah, but it doesn't. You can't call out the. Yes, it was my segue.
Okay, now I was trying to make sure I didn't miss it. Okay.
Okay, no.
That's fine.
So
my favorite thing at E3, hands down, and I don't know how much of E3 you watched. I watched very, very, very little. And I never watch it live. I got better things to do than watch the presentations live.
Uh-huh.
But I catch most of it through osmosis on Twitter and on the Discord and whatnot, so I know what's coming down the pipeline.
Uh-huh.
And if something pops up that I'm interested in, I'll go to YouTube and I'll watch after the fact.
Right.
All we got was maybe 10 seconds of video footage flying over this landscape with music playing. And then the title shows up. Elder Scrolls 6. And that's it. That's all we got.
Are you looking forward to playing Elder Scrolls on your Alexa?
Oh.
Because I'm assuming that's the target platform, and then you'll just port it from there.
Well, probably I'm going to play it on PC.
Yeah, because, then you get the mods and whatever, and that's the kind of game people like to mod.
What? So, because that's been my only connection to it. They showed the title, I know it's coming. That's all the information I need. What? Alexa? How are you gonna play Elder Scrolls with Alexa?
I have no idea. Apparently, there's this. It was a joke about people were like they've ported Skyrim to everything. They're gonna port it to the Alexa next. Ha ha ha. Apparently, now you literally can like tell Alexa to do things, and it'll do the things in Skyrim. To be completely honest, I've just seen the jokes. I haven't actually watched a trailer or anything, so I don't know. I have no idea how that's supposed to work.
I remember watching a YouTube video of a guy fighting the hardest boss in Dark Souls using voice commands on his Kinect.
Oh, that's awesome.
The camera's over his shoulder, so you see his screen, and he's sitting there not holding a controller saying, roll left, heavy attack, roll left. And you can tell this is his 9,000th try because the battlefield is littered with all of his previous deaths.
Oh, that's amazing. The most amazing thing I've seen that is along those lines is when people play games with the like Guitar Hero controller, because apparently the Guitar Hero controller, you can just map buttons to it, so you can have like limited control. And I'm pretty sure people have played Dark Souls or whatever with the Guitar Hero controller, just like tapping the buttons really fast. Like this button, you hold this button to go forward, you tap this button to dodge roll, you press this button to stab. That's really all you need, right? Forward, dodge, roll, stab.
Pretty much. That sounds like Dark Souls. That sounds about right.
No, I watched a decent amount of E3. Well, I say a decent amount. I mean, I watched the things that I cared about, which was I watched the Sony press conference to see if they'd find a reason to sell me a PS4, which they did not. And then I watched the Nintendo conference to see if they were going to show anything other than Smash Brothers, which they did not. So for me, it was a pretty weak E3. The main thing I noticed on E3 this year was, and this has been like, that people have been kind of talking about this on like Twitter and stuff, like, is it a problem or is it not, is it was like throat stab central. Everything was about stabbing people in the throat. And don't get me wrong, I'm down with a good throat stab, but I don't know that that's the best way to sell your products to, like, E3 I always thought of, it's like the general consumer thing. Like, you are making your big push for the fall at E3, and Sony opened with Last of Us Part 2, which is like adorable lesbian kiss, hard transition to throat stab. Like, that was the presentation.
You know what? I have watched that footage. It wasn't at E3 because this was actually a thing from a couple months ago that was kind of making the rounds. Is this too graphic for a trailer? And I wonder about that.
It's a continuation of that. Well, so there's this one reviewer who was basically saying, look, I don't care about violent games. You know, I think that it's fine. I don't want to censor violent games. So she's like, I personally, it makes me uncomfortable, you know? And she's like, and I have to cover these things. Can we not have, like, green band trailers and red band well, she didn't say this. This was actually my interpretation of it. I'm going to take credit for it. I was like, what? Can we not have, like, green band trailers and red band trailer equivalents in video games? And the most hilarious part of it to me was apparently Disney, of all companies, decided they were going to try to stream E3 and then try to awkwardly censor whenever the things got violent, like by throwing up random blurs on the screen. And they actually got in trouble because apparently the way that the Last of Us trailer goes, it's this long romantic thing in the barn where Ellie and like this girl start kissing, and then I just sent you a link, and then it like does a hard cut to throat stab. And it's, you know, it makes sense. Like, I understand from an editing perspective why they did that. They go from the softness to like directly to a throat stab. And Disney got in trouble because people were like, oh my god, they censored the gay kiss.
Oh, okay. You're explaining this and I'm thinking, where's the controversy here? But then, yeah, that makes sense. Got it.
Disney was showing this. For some reason, they thought it was a good idea to show this live. I don't actually know if they were doing this online or if they were actually doing this like on TV. I think they were just doing this on TV. And they were showing E3 or showing clips from it or whatever. And my guess is they were doing it on like a delay, like a 10-second delay with a dump button.
Right.
The way that this piece is edited, it's romantic lesbian kiss, throat stab. So the way it comes across on Disney is they go in for the kiss. I think they actually start the kiss just very slightly, and then it just hard cut to like commercial or something. And people are like, Disney is censoring lesbianism. What is going on? And they're like, well, no, they were censoring throat stabbing.
There's a lot to unpack in this story. And I think the first question, the most unambiguous thing we can come to consensus on, is when you say that Disney was streaming E3 live on the Disney Channel or on one of their affiliate websites?
It actually says at the top of the story, Disney XD, the kid-focused cable channel owned by Disney, partnered with gaming news website IGN to broadcast it this year.
So here's my first thought. Because Disney's a big company. It might be the biggest. Like, Disney and Nabisco ever joined forces, we're all dead.
Yes, clearly, because they own all the water.
But Disney has a lot of violence under its umbrella. They had Dimension Films and Touchstone back in the 90s, but they don't market those as Disney products. This was marketed as a Disney product.
Disney XD is apparently the name of the channel. It is a Disney...
Okay. Somebody at Disney and somebody at IGN dropped the ball on this in the planning stages for this, because you cannot stream E3 to children unless you are okay with children watching very violent imagery.
Well, okay, so I have two thoughts on this. The first one is obviously Disney did not know what they were getting into. During the thing, they omitted content that did not meet their policy standards, including several seconds of animated video game scenes that began with a kiss but ended with a knife attack in which a character's throat was slashed. Only the later violent portion of the scene was not televised from the event. So for that one, they like awkwardly just cut away. Like they just kind of were like, we're going to show this thing, and then we're going to cut to a static image, IGN Live, E3 2018. But for other things, they were showing it and they would just throw like this like blur up on the screen so that you would still hear it.
So you got to hear the throat stabbings and whatnot.
Right. But here's the thing. They weren't quick enough on the trigger. So there's this other tweet that's further down in the story where you see it's the samurai sword game, which actually looks pretty rad. It's one of the coolest things that they showed. It looks kind of like the old Samurai Warriors game. But anyways, yeah, they kept like throwing up this little blur filter, but they kept mistiming it. Ugh. It was a hot mess. So I think Disney dropped the ball on airing this thing in the first place.
You said that Disney didn't know what they were getting into, and I'm going to disagree strongly there. If Disney didn't know what they were getting into when it comes to restreaming E3 footage, that's really their fault, because it should have been somebody's job to go back and see what our video game trailers typically like, and you wouldn't have had to go back far. Even in previous E3s, there's always blood, there's violence, there's murder. Most video games are about murdering people.
Yeah, sadly, yes. And that's the thing is, okay, they must have had some idea what they were getting into, because they had two different kinds of ways of cutting these things off. They had a complete dump button, and then they had this weird blur filter. They apparently tried both ways. Neither of them came across very well. So I guess they knew what they were getting into, which they just didn't do it very well.
I'm going to assume, I don't know this obviously, but I assume IGN was the one in charge, like somebody in IGN's payroll was in charge of actually hitting that dump button.
Well, which is why I wonder if it is that Disney didn't know what they were getting into. I wonder if Disney basically said, hey, IGN, do you want to have this time to put some content on? And IGN said, we will take care of the censoring.
And if IGN said that, then I'm going to say the fault is predominantly IGN, because IGN's response should have been, you can't stream E3 trailers to children. There's going to be a Nintendo Directs thing. We'll stream the entirety of that. It'll be fine. Here is all of the game coverage that's likely to be at E3 this year that we think will be appropriate for children. We've curated this from the entire show. That's what EGN should have done. Not just, 10-second delay and dump button and we'll be good to go.
But here's my question. Do you think it's good for video games as an industry for the big, we're going to show everything to the press event to have not only feature this degree of violence, but to highlight it? You didn't watch you just watched the trailer. You haven't actually watched the Sony presentation.
I saw the Last of Us 2 trailer many months ago because somebody in my stream chat mentioned, hey, have you seen this trailer? It takes the idea of violence to the next level.
I think this was a newly edited trailer, but I feel like the violence was about the same. So I don't mind a violent trailer. I kind of think that a violent trailer is fine. It is what video games are. And I don't mind it for movies either. I mean, I'm totally down with, if I see some so-and-so Red Band trailer, Deadpool 2 Red Band trailer, I'm on board. But I think that you know what you're getting into. I think that the way that the way that the PS4 event went, they put all the journalists in like this converted barn tent because that's the way it works in the shot. Like they were perfectly simulating the scene from Last of Us 2. They were hitting this hard. And it's a pretty long trailer where they have like this long cutscene where Ellie is feeling out of place at this like barn dance and this girl asks her to dance and you know, it's this whole big thing, and then throat stab, throat stab, throat stab. Do you think it's good for the industry for that to be like, this is video games at our big event? Or do you think it would be better to be more general audience, and then you still have your red band trailers? You can still even debut them at E3, but maybe not necessarily this is the first thing we're going to hit you with at the Sony press conference.
And this is the second of 3 issues I said that this story kind of unpacks. I'm going to say unambiguous yes. It's fine to do that, and I'm going to explain why. Video games are violent. The best-selling video games are all murder simulators.
I have quibbles with that.
I mean, they run the gamut, starting from Breath of the Wild, where you're murdering goblins and ghosts and things, to Horizon, where you're murdering robots, to The Last of Us, where you're murdering people. And the actual targets of this violent runs the gamut. You also have the verisimilitude of the violence that run the gamut. Like, you've got Metal Gear games where you shoot the guy and he falls down and then he blinks for a second and vanishes, versus The Last of Us, where you have this incredibly visceral, horrifying throat stab. It takes all kinds.
It's really the Foley work that makes it horrifying to me. I can handle a throat stab if it's like off screen and you see the blood splatter, but it's when you hear the guy gurgle and struggle and I'm just like, I'm out. I'm so out.
Here's why I'm a hard yes on this. Imagine E3, or I'm going to say Sony, because it's Sony's game. Imagine Sony decided to show a trailer of The Last of Us, show the lesbian kiss, maybe show some of the zombies shambling around, show a little bit of gameplay of, I presume you play Ellie in this game, sneaking around with a bow and arrow or whatever, and leave it at that. Disney restreams this game. Yeah, it says rated M for mature or whatever, but Disney restreams this. 10,000 children across America see this game and say, oh, it's about a teenage girl killing zombies. Can I have this game for Christmas? And now there's going to be an outrage of this incredibly violent game sold to children.
That's on parents, though. I mean, if it's rated M for mature, and to be clear, I think the Red Band trailer should totally still exist. I'm just saying, should they lead with that at E3?
I'm going to say in the specific case of The Last of Us 2, yes. Because that is a very accurate depiction of what the game is like. The Last of Us is a game that hits you hard and constantly, and it was praised for doing that. So when you're going to make The Last of Us 2, if you're going to keep that same tone, I think you should make a trailer that fits the tone of the game. Not just, it's going to be a zombie action game, but no, it's going to make you ask really hard questions about what your player's doing on screen and whether or not they're the good guy. In this medium of video games with this particular game, yes, I think that's what Sony wants to portray the game as, and I think if they marketed it any other way, it would be misleading.
What was the third point you were saying it brought up?
The third point is the fun controversy. Because the controversy was not, hey, Disney showed a throat stab, or even Disney gave a thumbs up to the murder simulator that's going to be really hot come Christmas time. The controversy was Disney censored the lesbian kiss. And
which they didn't even do. I mean, not really. I mean, they show the lesbians kiss. They just cut part of it because it transitions into throat stabby central.
Right, but if you just read news headlines the day of E3, that's what you would have got. You wouldn't have got the retractions and the corrections later down the road.
Oh, and I'm sure that got retweeted 1,000 times. I'm sure that's,
yeah.
You know, I'm pretty sure that I just saw when I was looking for this story again, I'm pretty sure one of the first things I saw was the Reset Era thread where they're like, they censored this. And I'm like, no, they didn't.
But the reason that this controversy, I find it amusing. It amuses me because Disney or IGN or whoever made this minor mistake on what was probably already an ill-thought-out business decision to restream E3 to children, and they got in trouble for it. To me, this is just an excellent example of why they need to think about how they're going to approach this. 10-second lead and a dump button's not going to do it. at the time when they were discussing, hey, how are we going to censor all of the violence that we can't stream to Disney XD or whatever it's called. I'm sure nobody at that table, I bet there were 18 people at that table representing Disney and IGN and who knows who else. And nobody thought, we have to do this because there might be a lesbian kiss that hard cuts to a throat stab, and if we don't censor it fast enough, people are going to think that we're censoring the lesbian kiss. You can't foresee that kind of thing, and that's what got them in the most trouble.
But I also think it's interesting that people immediately assumed it was a homophobic thing and not a, no, seriously, this was violent as crap thing, because we are more used to seeing 18 different ways of throat stabbing in a video game than we are to, it's a decently animated kiss, but it ain't like you're seeing much. It's a PG-13 kiss.
Right,
it just happens to be two girls. It's just amusing to me that like sexuality of any kind, and it kills me that we can have in video games 1,000 different ways to kill somebody as graphic as you want, but you have just the tiniest bit of semi-realistic sexual content, and they're like, nope, adults only rating. You are effectively banned at this point, you know? The freaking hot coffee mod was the biggest joke, because I don't even think they actually showed anything. I think it was just like dry humping, you know, awkward polygons. And they're like, oh, it's simulated sex. We have to put this adults only, and they're gonna have to recall video games because a mod can unlock a feature that was cut from the game. Like, oh my god, that stuff just kills me. I'm like, why is sex so much like, I'm not saying that sex should be all up in video games, but why is it so much more taboo than the murder simulators we all love to play and shoot each other with?
I have no idea. That's a big topic that we're not going to be able to get into the depths of. I want to circle back, though, real quick to...
Okay.
I want to give an example of a video game that failed this marketing test. Tomb Raider 2012 was coming out, and some of the initial marketing... There's a scene in this game where... It's towards the beginning of the game where Lara Croft has very few weapons and she needs to sneak through this facility that is filled with guards. It's before there's a lot of combat in the game. It's like a stealth tutorial kind of area. And there's one section where she steps out and a guy grabs her from the shadows. It's like a little QTE. Like you have to wrestle with him to get him off. And he's a bad guy. And he says, again, in a kind of PG-13 way, he implies some things he's going to do to Lara Croft. That made it into the trailer. The next 10 seconds where she kills this guy effortlessly didn't make it into the trailer. At the time, nobody knew what this Tomb Raider reboot was going to be. And so, what it became, based on the marketing they showed, there was outcry. The new Tomb Raider is going to be a rape simulator. And of course it's not. It's not even remotely that.
No. But you have that little bit of implied, you know, force in there, and you don't resolve it because it was a poorly edited trailer.
Exactly.
Is really what it comes down to.
There was some marketing guy, he didn't pay attention to the tone of the game versus the tone he was trying to create in the trailer, and it misrepresented the game. And as I recall, the developers went back, Crystal Dynamics went back and release statements like that doesn't represent what's in the actual game. But you don't have to do that if you market the game honestly up front.
I could see that. I guess my whole thing is just wondering, you know, and you know, I'm open to either way. It was just very jarring sitting like I'm at work. I got a little bit of time. I'm going to open up a browser. I'm going to see what's going on with PlayStation. I'm going to see if this is the year I'm going to buy a PS4. Are they going to show me something really cool? And I'm a little biased because I actually didn't enjoy Last of Us very much. The first one, I didn't enjoy the stealth mechanics, and it was just kind of oppressive, I felt like. And so I'm sitting down and I'm like, okay, this is whatever.
It's definitely not a beer and pretzels game. It is very... I haven't played it, but I was in a room watching a friend of mine play it, and it is a very oppressive game. That's a really good word to describe it. And that's by design. It's very stressful. It's pretty difficult, and it's heavy. It's very weighty, this game.
By not watching E3 live, you missed out on the best part, which was, so I told you they had this whole thing done in like a revival tent. You're like at a church, revival or something, and so they put the conference in there and they showed this Last of Us trailer, and it's actually really well done. Like they had this guy come out and play like this crazy like banjo tune. I don't know if it's actually literally in the game, but it matches this tone of the original music in the game. And they showed the trailer, and everyone was like, "Woo!" And then they cut to a couple of dudes at a booth, like a table outside of this thing, and they did basically like the halftime report. 10 minutes into the presentation, they took everybody who was at the show and took them from this one special set and moved them into the actual auditorium. And it clearly did not go smoothly. They were like talking, I was like, "Oh, that was a great trailer. What are you looking forward to seeing? Are we going to see any surprises?" And then you could tell they were kind of like looking at the camera like, "What do we do now? They should have all been in the trailer by now." And so they're like, "Well, we're going to show you." Somebody must have been in their ear and was like, "Cut to the sizzle reels." They're like, "We're going to show you some of the things you can expect from Sony this year." And so they showed like a 2-minute trailer, and then they cut back and it's like, "We're going to get back to the presentation in just a minute, folks, I promise you." And then they had to vamp for like 30 minutes while they moved the entire press corps from one auditorium to another because they decided to do this set. And I'm like, if this Last of Us is your linchpin thing, why not just do the whole thing in there? Like, I have no idea why they didn't just do the whole thing in this first like revival tent.
Marketing is hard, I guess. It's
It was really funny. And then so the second one starts up and they do the same thing. They start with a guy playing a musical instrument. In this case, it was, I don't know what it's called, but it's the really long Japanese flute, the one that you hear like the really loud breath in. It's like all over Okami, right?
Oh my God, yes, I tip of my tongue. I can't think of it. It's going to drive me crazy.
If it comes to you, shout it out. But yeah, so the guy plays like this crazy speed Jethro Tull type thing on one of those things, right? And then they show this trailer for this awesome looking samurai game, which looks really rad, and I can't think of the name of it right now. And then everybody in the because I'm like, are they going to move to another theater? Are we going to have another super awkward? No, they stayed in that theater. Nice. But it was amazing. Like, it was the most beautiful train wreck watching this thing happen live, and just watching the deer in headlights on these guys who are like, "Yeah, we're gonna get back to the show in just 1 minute, folks. But we'll show you another trailer."
There probably was a third auditorium, but after the first move, they're like, "No, you know what? Just do it all in the second place. We're here now. Just do it all."
Which is really a shame because I would have loved to have seen the auditorium for the Death Stranding trailer, because that would have been something, I'm sure.
I do have my complete list here of E3 games that I know are coming out that I'm excited about. Death Stranding is one of them. I've enjoyed every Death Stranding trailer we've seen so far. I don't know anything more about the game now than when we first saw the first trailer.
I literally hope all of the gameplay is the bit of the gameplay we saw, which is just him walking with a backpack. I hope it is literally a walking simulator with Kojima ass cutscenes in between. I hope that's all the game is, and people love it.
So there was that. There's Elder Scrolls 6, which I mentioned, and then Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the new Tomb Raider. That's it. E3 didn't show me anything else that I'm really looking forward to playing.
So speaking of throat stabbing, I have not actually played the second Tomb Raider yet because I rage quit the first Tomb Raider because I got stuck on that stupid river that you keep going down and QuickTime event, and every time you fail, you get stabbed in the throat by like a long branch. I'm pretty sure you have a highlight, actually.
I have a video on YouTube where I hit that. It's a piece of rebar or something, or a tree branch. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's just over and over again. And I did that like 8 times in a row. And I had this on rental. This was when I had one of those times when I decided I was going to do GameFly for a little while. So I had this on a rental, and I was like, nope, I'm just putting this back in the mailbox. I'm done. So I haven't played Tomb Raider 2 yet, but it interests me because supposedly it's a lot better about the QuickTime events. There's not like throat stabby McRiver this time around.
I can't really recall, but I mean the QuickTime events in the first game I thought were well done. So if that's something they improved for the second, it wasn't something that I noticed.
I mean, it was literally just the river that maybe stopped. Like before that, I was fine, but the river just killed me repeatedly. Another Tomb Raider, I'm down. That's fine. There wasn't really anything. I was all excited for Nintendo because I'm a Nintendo fanboy, like guilty as charged.
Right.
And I was like, oh boy, what craziness is Nintendo going to have? Are they going to show us the Prime 4 trailer? Are they going to show us some, like, is Square going to port some neat stuff? You know, are we going to get, I really wanted to get the chibi phone version of Final Fantasy 15 on the Switch, because I think that would be adorable. But they didn't show that. They mostly just showed stuff we already knew about, and a ton of Smash Brothers, and I don't care about Smash Brothers that much, so...
No, I'm with you. What happened was, and again, this is marketing gone wrong. Smash Brothers Brawl, the lead up to that game coming out, felt like 10 years. Because there was a developer blog at the time that got updated daily. Every little minute piece of development that went into that game, he had a big write-up about it. The character reveals were like holidays on the internet. And by the time the actual game came out, and it was like, it's pretty much just like the other Smash Brothers, I was so exhausted by that marketing blitz that the subsequent Smash Brothers game, when Smash 4 was coming out, I'm like, I'm not going through this again.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit through a year or two of character reveals and stage reveals and then just have the game be basically Smash again.
My problem with Smash is I love the concept, but I'm not a big fan of just fighting games. And so I actually really enjoyed the Subspace Emissary. It's a dumb single player, you can play it multiplayer thing to do, but I was like, fan fiction side scroller action game with these characters I love is fun to me. I love that silly Flash game, that retro, whatever it's called, the Nintendo crossover game that's on the internet. Like, I love stuff like that. You could play, like, you play Mario 1, but you can use, like, the Contra guy. Like, that's stupid, but I love that stuff.
Oh, I remember that, yes.
Melee had a pretty good adventure mode. There were discrete stages, the little short stages, but it was pretty fun to play the adventure mode. Brawl had the Subspace Emissary, and I was like, this is legitimately a lot of fun. They put a lot of effort into the Wii one. And then 4 came out, and the single player was just garbage. It was like this you play as your Mii on like a board game, and it's just, you have no idea what's going on. Like, you just do these, you have a fight and then some power-ups happen on the board, and it was just like the worst parts of Mario Party, but with Smash Brothers fights in betweens, and I hated it.
I remember both versions of Smash 4. I actually have both versions. Had a different kind of single-player mode, and I thought both of them were bad.
Yeah, like, I keep hearing the 3DS one is better, but it's really just a variation. Like, it's still, you play a bunch of fights and you get power-ups. So I decided, after buying, the 3 or 4, I guess 3 in a row, because I didn't actually own 64, I just borrowed it. After buying 3 in a row, I was like, I'm not going to buy the Smash Ultimate unless they actually put some effort into the single player, which they probably won't. And I've been saying for years, Smash should be a franchise, not a single game. I mean, I guess it's technically a franchise, but I said before Mario Kart 8, which came out, and don't get me wrong, Mario Kart 8's awesome, but I said they should rebrand it as Smash Kart and just put, Samus in a little go-kart with a course that goes through Hyrule and stuff like that. And they sort of did that with Mario Kart 8 because they eventually added a bunch of, like, other characters, but it's still mostly Mario Kart.
There's a Zelda track and an Animal Crossing track and whatnot.
Yeah, but it's still like, you still have like 18,000 Mario characters no one cares about. It could just be Mario and Luigi and Prince and Princess Peach and Bowser, and then add Samus and like 18 anime sword guys and... Yeah, seriously, like, and then being able to get, like, one of your power-ups, instead of it being a turtle shell, it is a super missile. Like, I've been saying for years now that they should do Smash Kart, and then they should, instead of having it be a mode in Smash Brothers, they should have, like, a Smash adventure game where you can actually have, like, a better designed 2D platformer engine that's just for, running around as Link in 2D, in, like, Mario World. That'd be awesome to me.
Yeah, I don't know that I can go down that rabbit hole with you, my friend.
I mean, I'm a Nintendo fanboy through and through, so that kind of stuff gets me all excited.
When it comes to those kind of celebration games, the burnout on them happens very swiftly. And I know this because one of my favorite series is Final Fantasy, and I have probably 10 different kinds of Final Fantasy celebration games on the shelf. And I enjoyed each of them individually, but when I look back on the franchise as a whole over the past 10 years, it feels very wearying. Dissidia, Theatrhythm, World of Final Fantasy Record Keeper. There's a bunch of other cell phone games that do the kind of thing. There was like a virtual card game for a while that I didn't. It might be Japan only, so I haven't played it. Final Fantasy XIV is their MMO, and all of the content they put into that game, it's just, we made this content 20 years ago when you loved it then. Here, love it again! All of the DLC for 13-2 that I saw, like there's Gilgamesh DLC for that. In Final Fantasy 15, you get your little iPod you can listen to in the car, and guess what? It's the full soundtrack for every Final Fantasy game that's ever been released.
I actually think that's really rad, but that's because music is so powerful, and like that's where I like the one I'm going to disagree with you on is Theatrhythm, because that had an actually good rhythm game backbone to it, and I think that's the key. The phone games are all these awful gacha things where you just like, ooh, I can spend $1, or I can, use these in-game currency, and I'm going to get a character I like, or maybe I'm going to get another garbage character. You never know. But I think Theatrhythm, I actually really enjoyed the actual game of it.
I really do as well. I've played probably close to 100 hours of it over the course of my life. And as I'm playing it, I really enjoy the gameplay and the mechanics of it. But when I look at my shelf and what Final Fantasy games do I have on my shelf? Okay, well, I've got a couple of numbered ones, and then I've got 20 of them that are just nostalgia cakes. And nostalgia cake is very tasty while you're eating it, but if you eat it over and over for years and years and years, it does make you a little bloated.
See, and I guess it just says what kind of sad person I am, because the whole time I'm thinking the other thing that I want besides a Smash franchise is a Theatrhythms franchise, because I would totally pay Theatrhythm Nintendo, where you tap your little buttons to play like the Hyrule Field theme, and you've got this little like dead-eyed Link scrolling across on the side. I would play the hell out of that.
I love the little dead-eyed characters.
Oh,
they're so
good. They weirded me out at first. I got to be honest. I hated the art style at first, but then once I kind of got used to it, because like the way that they move is very like paper doll almost. It's hilarious. No, I like Theatrhythm, but I hate the phone games. I've played most of them for at least a few minutes, and every time I'm like, this sucks. I don't like this anymore. Stop trying to sell me stuff.
My wife and I, we went on a date last week.
What?
We don't often go on dates, but once in a while we had. After the last time you and I talked, I sat down at the computer and I got on this wide internet of ours, and I decided to find out if there is a witch in my area, and we found one.
Nice.
Way out in it's in Bradenton, which from our position it's a 40-minute drive. We got to go across Tampa Bay and then take the interstate all the way through downtown Tampa, and we decided, all right, we're gonna go up to the witch and try this sandwich. And then when we got out there, we're like, well, we're already out here. There's a mall nearby. We might as well go see like a movie or something.
Right.
So I thought I would share our witch experience with you.
Can I just preface this by saying I in no way meant to imply you should drive 40 minutes for a frickin' witch.
Well, we talked too. Like, there's math to this. You'll drive past X subways to get to a Wawa. So, definitely, we probably drove past. I think I counted 4 or 5 Jimmy Johns to get to the witch, and the math doesn't work. So we get there, and when you order your food at the witch, you have your little rack of paper bags, and you take your paper bag and you pick what you want on your sandwich.
Yep.
And then you take the paper bag up to the register, and the register monkey hands it back to the sandwich monkey, and the sandwich monkey makes your sandwich and puts it in the paper bag for you.
Yeah.
They were mostly out of bags. The rack was almost entirely empty.
Oh no.
So
it's tragic.
We've never ordered a witch before. We've never been here. We know kind of how it works, but it was confusing because some of them had like little Sharpie notes saying we're out of bags, use another bag, and some of them were saying like we're out of this kind of sandwich. So fortunately, the wicked witch was there. So
I'm still upset at myself for not getting that before.
My wife got it instantly because she is a huge Wizard of Oz buff. Like, when I told her the joke, like, she didn't get it at first. She understood the pun of it. She understood the wordplay. She didn't get why you didn't get it. Because she could not conceive of somebody not getting that immediately.
I'm just dumb, I guess.
So we find our bags, and we take it up to the guy. And I explained to the guy, like, this is our first time here, but a dude on the internet told me how it works. And he's like, oh, what dude? And well, you don't know him. He's a friend of mine. He lives outside of Atlanta. He was like, oh, I was born in Georgia. I probably know him. So
What?
our witch register guy is a friend of yours, apparently. Because if you're born in Georgia, you know everybody else who lives in Georgia. That's the first thing I learned at the Witch.
This is news to me, but okay, fair enough.
My sandwich, I enjoyed it. It was a very decent sandwich. I enjoyed half of it right there, and then I enjoyed the other half later that night. Peanut ordered the meatball marinara, which is her favorite sandwich. It had meatball and marinara sauce and pepperoni, and she put all the stuff on the bag. And her sandwich had no sauce. No cheese.
What?
Just naked meatballs and pepperoni and the couple of veggies wrapped up. So, sad to say, unfortunately, Peanut did not have a very pleasing witch experience.
I mean, first of all, you walk into a witch and they don't have enough paper bags, you know you're in for trouble. That'd be like walking into Wendy's and they're like, we're out of hamburger buns. You can order anything you want, but we're just out of hamburger buns. We're like, well...
We've been just piling the patties on the napkins and sliding them over.
Just hold your hand out and we're going to spatula a burger into your hands.
While we were eating our witch, though, a group of kids come in. Like a big group of, 8 boys came in. And it's clear that they had lived in the area and that witch is like their favorite thing ever. It's like it's Friday night. They got the weekend here. So we got to eat our witch sandwich watching this table of kids. And I remember working in places like Witch. I worked at an ice cream shop for a while and a pizza shop for a while. And I remember for the kids, super exciting. We get to go to our favorite sandwich place and you get to order awesome sandwich and you go to the soda and you get a little bit of every kind of soda in the giant cup.
Yeah, the suicide, we called it.
But the guys that I was watching, as I turned over and I watched the little counter monkeys and I was like, the looks on their face, they're not happy to see these 8 children bursting into the witch at all.
Well, it reminds me of when I was a kid and you would go to heck, even Subway, where it'd be like, ooh, I want this, and I want that, and I want this. Or you go to the frozen yogurt place, and you're like, I want chocolate chips, and I want sprinkles, and I want gummy bears, even though gummy bears are terrible in frozen yogurt, but I put it on there anyway. Mm-hmm. When you're a kid, being able to pick your toppings for anything is just amazing. We have another place that you have to try if you're ever in the area, or if they ever expand down there. It's called Your Pie. And it is basically Subway except for pizza.
We have a restaurant similar to that. It's not called that, but it's similar.
Yeah, I think the concept has made its way around. But Your Pie is the one that's up here. And I love it because I just sit there and point at I wish they had paper bags, honestly, so I could just hand it to somebody.
Maybe you could just go to the Witch, take a bunch of their bags, take the bags over to the Your Pie, and see if you can make it happen.
Man, being able to get a little personal sized pizza with artichoke hearts and sun-dried tomatoes and meatballs and stuff on it, you can make just the craziest pizza over there, and it's really good stuff.
We finish our sandwiches and we go down to the mall where there's a movie theater, and we have a little conversation because I want to see A Quiet Place, which is dark and introspective horror movie, and she's like, I'm not about that. She wants to see Han Solo, and I'm like, nope, veto. So the movie we settled on, to make sure that neither of us was happy, is we actually went and saw Ocean's 8.
Ah, the girls' ocean. They're ladies, so they get fewer oceans.
First of all, I enjoyed the movie. Let's start there. I may be biased. I like a good heist movie, and Ocean's 11 is one of my favorites. Quality movie, very, very entertaining. Highly recommended. I'm not going to spoil it here on the podcast. I'm not going to...
The statute of limitations is not run out on the spoilers for the movie still in theaters.
Right, the movie's only 2 weeks old or whatever. But all I could think of coming out of the theater, being pleased with my experience of having watched this movie, it all goes back around to bad marketing. Because all I could think of is contrasting how Ocean's 8 came out, and it had kind of a low-key marketing campaign.
Yeah.
I don't remember, I wasn't lambasted with commercials or anything for it. It didn't pop up in front of all my YouTubes or whatever. And I just keep contrasting that with the Ghostbusters reboot from a few years ago, where the entire marketing campaign was this very aggressive, look, girls are funny, and then a clip of girls not being funny.
Yeah, I actually have not sat down and watched the newer Ghostbusters. I've gotten very mixed opinions on it. I've got people who said it was great, and I've got people who said it was terrible, and not like people who are like, oh, it's Ghostbusters, that sucks, but people who are legitimately like, it was okay. You know, people who wouldn't be like just sexist idiots about it, who would actually legitimately be like, it was okay. But then I have other people who are like, no, it was amazing. It was this awesome, funny movie. And I'm like, are you just being a little too enthusiastic? I don't know.
I haven't watched the movie. I have watched in-depth, like, critical breakdowns of it. People that do the really in-depth theatrical breakdowns of movies. And my understanding, again, secondhand knowledge, is that it fails as a comedy for 3 reasons. First of all, the people just aren't that funny that they cast in there. You don't have A-list comedians playing a character. I don't actually know the names of the women in the movie, but...
Well, like, Kate McKinnon is a very funny actress on Saturday Night Live, but I don't think she's broken through as something other than a Saturday Night Live player. And they're all Saturday Night Live people, I think, actually. And the impression I got was if it felt like a Saturday Night Live sketch. Like, it was funny, but not in the way that... I mean, Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters, is very much a character-driven movie.
Precisely. The big change there was in the original Ghostbusters, you cast actors. Comedic actors, sure. But then in this in the reboot, they cast comedians. And
right.
Comedians being funny doesn't translate to comedians playing characters. That's the first thing. The second thing was apparently a lot of that script was very loosey-goosey. There was a lot of improv.
Right.
Which, again, is great if you're watching Saturday Night Live, but doesn't really come across in a long-form movie.
If I have my lore correct, a lot of people think Ghostbusters, the original movie, was largely improvised, and it wasn't. It was just really well scripted and really well acted so that the conversation flowed naturally. There's a big difference between looking improvised and being improvised.
That's a good way of putting it, yeah. But then the other thing about the original Ghostbusters that a lot of people don't really think about because it's such a classic movie now. It's just part of the cultural soup. But the third thing is, the original Ghostbusters, you had one headline comedian being funny through the whole movie. It was Bill Murray. Yeah. And of course, Dan Aykroyd is also a comedian. He's a funny guy. But Dan Aykroyd was playing the straight man. And the other 2 Ghostbusters are also kind of there to play the straight man to Bill Murray. In the reboot, they cast 4 funny comedians, all trying to be funny all the time in every scene. And so you don't get that good that character interplay. So those are like 3 reasons why the script of the new Ghostbusters kind of falls apart.
I think part of the reason I haven't seen it is, like, Ghostbusters is undeniably my favorite movie.
Like, ever, of all time? That's your number 1?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. It's a case of nostalgia colliding with actual quality, because Ghostbusters is the first movie I remember seeing, like, ever, period. Like, I'm sure I saw some Disney movie or something beforehand, but it's the first movie I've ever seen, so I've enjoyed it as a child at the spectacle level, through the real Ghostbusters era, through being a teenager, through literally studying it when I went back to college in my 30s. I did a paper on Ghostbusters. I did like a postmodernist exploration of it in college, and I've enjoyed the movie like several different times on several different levels, to the point that I actually broke it down and like found like serious flaws with it and still love the movie.
You did like a deep dive theatrical critique.
Yeah, no, actually, that's literally what I did. If I took my paper and read it in YouTube, I would probably get lots of clicks and hate mail. And so, like, part of me is, like, terrified to watch this reboot because as a wussy male feminist, I know I probably should love it, but I'm scared I'm going to hate it. And I'm going to feel bad about it because I'm supposed to like it. That's what the Twitters tell me. I'm supposed to like it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you ever do the theatrical deep dive of it, I'm sure I would be very interested.
I'll try to catch it sometime and maybe bring it to this show. But
if you want to keep your wussy male guilt cred, though, put your chips on Ocean's 8. I'll explain why. First, it's a good movie. They didn't just cast they cast A-list actors in it. You've got Sandra Bullock and Anne Hathaway and Kate Blanchett and Helena Bonham Carter and actual actors that are actually...
Those are literally like some of my favorite female actresses.
Right?
Like out there. That's an amazing cast.
Dude, I had the biggest crush on Sandra Bullock in the 1990s. Speed and The Net. Oh,
Oh, The Net. Oh, go back and watch The Net now. It's hilarious.
Would it make me just want to drink bleach, I wonder?
Oh, God. I mean, it's just the worst. Like, the technology is so bad. I have currently a big crush on Anne Hathaway, so I know how that rolls.
Kind of hard not to.
I mean, she's adorable.
I won't tell your wife if you don't tell mine.
Oh, please, she knows. We watched Les Miserables together, and I was like, I mean, even in that movie, when she's like terrible and like, you know, it shaves her head and everything, I still was like, I love her.
But the other reason I really like this movie as opposed to Ghostbusters, and I don't know how much this came out in the movie in Ghostbusters, but the marketing campaign came across like they didn't really have an idea other than it's girls now, get used to it.
Yeah.
Women are funny. Like, I already knew women are funny. You didn't have to be so aggressive about it. And Ocean's 8 doesn't do that. It just makes this really good story and puts these female characters into it, and they all come up with their big plan. But there's one scene in the movie. I'm not going to spoil what happens, but it's not a reboot of Ocean's 11. It's a sequel. It's set after Ocean's 11. And there's one scene. Sandra Bullock plays Danny Ocean's little sister, Deborah Ocean. And Debbie's sitting there. And one of the other, like the computer hacker, comes in and they have a scene. And she looks over and she goes, "Oh, is that your brother? He's really hot." And it pans over to a framed picture of George Clooney sitting on the desk. And the camera just hangs there for what feels like forever. That one scene, I'm like, all right, laying it on a little thick.
Did you half expect, like, the still photograph of George Clooney to wink at you? Just, eh?
What I expected, actually, this doesn't happen. He's not actually in the films at all. Like, that's the only thing. You see him, his picture for a few seconds. I half expected, like, after they get away with the heist, at the last second, like, George Clooney transfers it all to his bank account, and he's just driving down.
Man, I've only seen bits and pieces of Ocean's 11, but what I know about it, it would be classic if, like, the end of the movie was like, ha, George Clooney was behind it the whole time. that would piss off the tumblers, by the way.
Yeah, probably really would. But that's what I really appreciated that about this movie, because it really felt like the writers of this movie had a great idea for a heist movie. Because these women, they're fashion designers, they're a big part of the movie. They're stealing crown jewels out of a museum. It really makes sense to have women playing these roles. It didn't come from a point of, hey, let's do this movie again, but put girls in it because girls are funny. I really appreciated that they started from, let's make a good movie. Now what?
I think that that's a big part of why, to some people at least, the Ghostbusters reboot falls down. And it's a shame that the internet being what it is, and remember, self-described wussy male feminist over here. It's a shame that the internet being what it is, you can't criticize some things without it being a big deal, because then you seem like you're attacking this thing that's supposed to be, it's women doing this thing, but it's like, well, but is it good? And I haven't seen the movie yet. I need to see it to be able to say, because I might come back in a week or two whenever I get the chance to see it and be like, no, it's actually a pretty good movie.
I'm sure it's on Netflix or whatever.
I mean, maybe. I feel like I've looked for it, but maybe not recently. But yeah, I'll have to check it out and report back. I have to read this to you because as a person with a journalism background, this just amused the hell out of me. Because this is maybe some of the best worst writing I've read in a long time. Warner Brothers crackdown puts dark mark over Potter festivals. Philadelphia. Warner Brothers is cracking down on local Harry Potter fans' film festivals around the country, saying it's necessary to halt unauthorized commercial activity. Fans, however, liken the move to Dementors sucking the joy out of homegrown fun, while festival directors say they'll transfigure the events into a generic celebration of magic. Quote, "It's almost as if Warner Brothers has been taken over by Voldemort, trying to use dark magic to destroy the light of a little town," said Sarah Jo Tucker, a 21-year-old junior at Chestnut Hill College, which hosts a Quidditch tournament that coincides with the annual Suburban Philadelphia Festival. That is amazing.
That hurt to listen to.
Ah, that is amazing. And Yeah, it's kind of a bummer that they're like halting these things, but you can't use the copyright. Like you can have like a fan festival, there's fair use, but once you start making money on like Harry Potter, you can't do that.
Okay, I'm gonna say that the Potter thing needs to be shut down. And you have a good point with the copyright. You know, it's their copyright; they can't use it. I'm gonna say it needs to be shut down for their own good, because they asked someone, 21-year-old, what was her name, Sarah Jenkins, whatever, and she said it's like if Voldemort. Nope, stop. You can't say that. I'm asking you as an adult person, and you're quoting fan fiction at me.
They play Quidditch. They play Quidditch.
Yeah.
You know how you win Quidditch? You catch the snitch. You know what you do in Muggle Quidditch? A dude is the snitch. You put like a flag football belt on somebody who runs around like a lunatic trying to not get caught. That's how it ends. That is the most insane thing ever.
I'm speechless. First of all, the Potter people are taking it way, way unreasonably seriously. Like, it sounded in that quote like she actually thought Voldemort was a real person. But then second of all, for the journalist to write it like that.
Oh, no, that journalist had that, like, that's their favorite story they've ever written. That is amazing.
That's the one that's going to come back to bite them 10 years from now when they're trying to climb the ladder. They're trying to get on as in the New York Times or something. It's like, did you write the word transfigured unironically into a story about Harry Potter? We're not hiring you.
The favorite part is they clearly are fans because, okay, it's one thing to say, like, they're using the dark arts or some generic magical stuff. No, transfigure is a pretty specific thing to Harry Potter. Like, they know exactly what they're talking about. I bet that this person wrote 18,000 more puns like that. Like, you know, the attendees said that they felt like second-class citizens, like house elves, if you were.
Isn't the dark mark supposed to be like murder these people? That's the indication to the dark wizards to murder the people who have this mark. Am I remembering the books correctly? Because if so, that is an incorrect usage of that term in that headline for the story.
Warner Brothers is literally killing Harry Potter fans.
And if they were, I would hope that they would leave the Potter puns off to the side and not include them in the story.
One 25-year-old fifth-year senior said they felt like they were going to have a permanent lightning scar on their forehead from this immense trauma.
Oh my god! A 25-year-old said that. Oh
no, I made that up. To be clear,
okay.
I was making that part up.
I just after hearing the story, I don't think you could catch me. I don't think you could catch me off guard with anything.
Oh god, I found it. I found the quote. Oh my god, I knew if I kept scanning this, I'd find something even dumber. They are acting like the Dursleys, said the 34-year-old yoga teacher and bookkeeper.
Oh, that person's my age, McClain.
I know.
I liked Harry Potter. I read all the books. I enjoyed them. I would never tell anybody, like, you're acting like a Dursley. And if I did, most people would be like, a what?
I can't. Okay, I'm done.
I tried to record a podcast this week, but it was though my partner had been hit by a laughing charm.
I think that a Weasley must have gotten something into my drink today.
All right, we gotta cut it there. Otherwise, we could do this for 3 more hours.